All right. That means it's official. So first things first, I'm going to mute everyone. I'm going to hit mute all here. And you can unmute yourself. But as has been said a couple of times, there's a lot of people on this call, which is fantastic. So I really do appreciate everybody joining in. But we can't, unfortunately, have anybody unmuting and tossing anything out there because it's just going to get difficult to manage. So for now, I'd appreciate it if you remained muted. If you do have something that you want to say, feel free to type it in the chat and we will try and answer any questions that come up as we go through things or at the end. And at the very end, we'll obviously get back to you with whatever questions you have, even if we don't answer them in the session. So if you have a question that doesn't get answered, don't worry, we'll get back to you. The only other thing I wanted to say is that thank you to HPBAC for setting this up. Obviously, Laura took a lot of time. They did their education week, so this is very much appreciated. And I just wanted to talk really, really briefly about HPBAC before we start the training. If you're aware or if you're not aware, our industry is facing more challenges than they ever have before. We're facing electrification, NESCOM, ADEC, wood burning bans across the country. Our industry overall, whether it's gas, wood, it doesn't matter which side you sit on, is virtually under attack. And sometimes it can be difficult to see the value in your HPBAC membership or your HPBA membership, but they're the ones that fight the fights, and they're the ones that have the know-how to go to government, who to speak to and when, and how. And so the one thing that we're seeing a lot of right now is, for example, in Comox Valley, they're fighting for the right to install new wood stoves. HPBA in the United States is fighting for the rights in California to have gas lines installed to new subdivisions. Tomorrow it could be your municipality and you're going to want HPBA or HPBAC by your side. So today, the best thing that you can do is be a member, pay your membership dues. Every dollar that you pay HPBAC goes directly to fighting these battles and supporting funds that are needed for places like Comox and California and whatever. And for all we know, next year it could be your own backyard and you're going to need them. So support the association. And if you can, if you're not a member, at the end of the session, I would really appreciate if you considered, becoming an HPBAC member. If you are a member and it's lapsed, I would appreciate you renewing. And if you are a member already, then that's fantastic and it's very much appreciated. So if you want to learn more about, if any of those things that I said, electrification, NESCOM, ADEC, all of that are new words to you, then you may want to consider coming to Focus Canada. It's going to be a session right around HPB Expo. So HPBA is virtual this year, the show, and they're putting together this virtual training where, virtual trade show. And Focus Canada is going to do a session on what are the challenges facing the industry. It's June 23rd at 3 p.m. So if you can make yourself available on June 23rd at 3 p.m. to listen to the challenges that the industry is facing, that would be fantastic. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into Renaissance stuff here. And if Laura, if you want to maybe stop sharing your screen, I'll share mine and we'll get into it.
Well, that's the term they use on the valve. They have an engine and they have different faces that go on it.
Okay, so we're going to start with the Uptown. Obviously, the Uptown is our newest unit. It's basically been out for a couple of years now. We have very few issues with Uptown doors, but the issues that we do tend to see come about repeatedly. So this is a software that we use at ICC for rendering. So you can see I can rotate it around here and we can look at it in 3D. This is not a PowerPoint. I'm just doing this live as we go through. So I'm going to try really hard not to make you dizzy. When I turn too fast, sometimes people get a little queasy. So I'm going to try really carefully to make sure that everybody follows. So this is our Uptown 600. If you look at the unit front, like straight on, we have these nice little blocks here at the top. And anytime that you're doing an installation, whenever you're done and you think you're done and you're going to leave, the first thing that you should check is these openings. Okay. If you look at the way it's designed at the bottom, it's a screw. So that screw can just come right out, and then the whole plate that I just hid swivels. You don't have to drill out this rivet at the top. You don't have to do any extra work. All you have to do is undo that screw at the bottom. The whole plate swivels upwards, and you can inspect, you can look inside there, you can see the pulley, you can see to make sure that the cable is running over the top of the pulley as it should be. And as you move the door up and down, things are working perfectly. That's just a simple final inspection port that we provide on both sides of the unit that you can look in. And if you don't, at the very least, then screw this screw and take a look in there. You're potentially doing yourself a disservice because it could save you a lot of trouble coming back later. Okay, so just really basic there. At the end of the installation, make sure you check those openings. So I'm going to go ahead and hide some parts here so we can see some things. And the first thing that I want to talk about is how the door on the Uptown seals. The Uptown door doesn't actually touch the face of the fireplace while it's moving up and down. It's about ½ an inch away from the face. And it really only gets sucked in the bottom, let's say 3/4 of an inch or so. So this plate that's green right now, that's the face of the fireplace. And then mounted to that, we have this, I've highlighted it in red. It's got this little roller on it. Now that piece there is designed to suck the door into the front of the unit. So in that last ½ inch of travel, and I'm going to hide everything so you can see really closely what we're looking at here. This is the glass. This is your door frame. And this little tab here and roller connect. So if you look at it from the side, and this is where people get sick, so just bear with me. But you can see that this little lip here is going to hit that roller. And then when it does that, it's going to get sucked into the face. And that's the last 3/4 of an inch of travel. So it comes in and down at that last 3/4 of an inch. And this is where we have issues. Because when this sucks in, obviously the door gets a lot tighter. And you potentially are going to run into maybe a little bit of friction or a gasket seal or something like that. That's going to be a problem. So how do you resolve issues with this door system is one question. If you have to adjust it so that it's too tight, or if it is too tight, you want to loosen it a little bit. We'll get there in just a second. But the most common issue that this causes, this door piece right here, is in transport. When the door is moving in the truck, here I have the unit with the door slightly raised. Okay, so you can see the door is got maybe 3 inches or so down from where its full height is. The door is up, but what winds up happening is it's very close to these pulleys. You can see how close that little bracket is. Remember that bracket? It's right next to the pulley. Okay, when we build the units, we always build them so that the pulley is facing, see this pulley here? We're looking at it from above right now. This pulley should be facing 45 degrees towards this ledge. Okay, the guys in production are, well, they're supposed to do that. They do that. But what happens is in transport, it can move. And so if this pulley is no longer facing at a 45-degree angle right into that corner, well, then there's a possibility that this little tab here that we looked at, I'm going to show you again from a different angle. That little tab can grab the pulley. So it sticks out just a fraction of an inch. And if that tab grabs that pulley on its way down, it's going to jam at exactly the height that we were looking at here. Okay, so if you are ever working on a Renaissance door, you're finishing up, the customer is using the unit and it seems to be working fine, but then all of a sudden it jams on the way down. It is guaranteed, because the back of that tab on the door is grabbing just the corner of the pulley. See how it just overlaps there? So the solution to this is pretty straightforward. See this bolt? That bolt is what fixes the pulley in place. So if I were to loosen that pull, and this is all, you know, the beautiful thing about the Uptown is, unlike a Rumford 1500, nothing is really far from your opening. You know, it's a big unit, but still everything is relatively easily accessible. So if you loosen this bolt, which you can do from just reaching a wrench inside, it's a 7/16 bolt, nut, excuse me. And you grab this pulley. So there's the pulley assembly. And you just turn it a hair. Just turn it a hair. Turn it towards the unit just enough. Boom. Okay. Once you've turned that just a hair, this little tab is going to clear and the door is going to slide up and down smoothly. But don't forget to retighten this bolt. Okay. If you leave that and forget to retighten this bolt, eventually it may want to work its way back to where it was. So if you do ever have to make an adjustment, this is grabbing, and you do have to turn the pulley. Just turning it is not going to be enough. You probably can do it by hand, but turn it and then get a wrench on this nut and this nut right here. Give it a good squeeze so that it's not going to re-loosen on you. Okay, but that is probably the most common issue we see with the uptown door sticking, is when this tab catches on the pulley. The next thing that we see related to the door is gasket wearing, especially at the bottom. So the door on the unit, the guys on the line are there to make sure that they get a good seal. So they always want to make sure that the door is really nice and tight. And we actually give them at the factory it's basically like a luggage scale. So if they have too much force required to close or open the door, they have to readjust it so that, you know, they're not supposed to leave it that tight. So then they put the luggage scale on it and they lift on it and they say, okay, well, it was supposed to be 15 pounds of resistance, but we're at 30, so we should loosen it up a bit. But especially on some of the original units, this is the whole door system together from the back. And as you can see, we've got the gasket here. Right along the base here, that's where you first hit the seal. That's where it first seals against the face of the unit. And if the door is too tight, it's going to create a little bit of resistance and it's going to start to wear. And if you start to wear here, it's not going to stop. Eventually, it's going to just get frayed. So the best solution to a frayed door gasket along the bottom of the door is to space the door out from the unit. And if you look at all this hardware here, there's tons of holes, there's tons of hardware, there's nuts and bolts. Where do you go to space the door off the face of the fireplace? I'm going to show you. So there's two little nuts, excuse me, there. And then there's a third one at the bottom of the unit. Those are 1/8 of an inch nuts. They're small. We're trying to hide the hardware here as much as possible. So you see those 3 green nuts there, 1, 2, 3. Those 3 nuts mount the door onto, not directly to the facing, but they mount you onto a bracket that's attached to the facing. So if you look at where they're mounted, we hide everything else. This is the frame of the door. Sorry, when I hover over something, it highlights green, so it's kind of hard to pinpoint something. The red thing, I'm going to make it red. The red thing is the frame of the door. The green thing is what's mounting it to the unit. So you can see that the green one is fixed. There's no adjustment in distance from the face of the fireplace where it mounts. But where it connects to the actual frame of the door, there is. So you can see the slots where this is right where those nuts are. If you look at that slot and, whoa, and these slots here, okay? Sorry, people are just joining. If you look at it from a side view, you can see those are oblong holes. So loosening those 3 nuts here, let's give you the same view from with it's there. So those are the 3 locations of the 3 nuts that I showed you earlier. When everything's back together, it looks like that. But if we look at it from the side, same 3 spots. Okay, so loosen those 3 nuts on both sides of the door. Squeeze the frame of the door together. That'll collapse the door in on itself, because the door is completely free from the unit. It's its own separate entity. So you can actually just take this whole system right out. And when you squeeze those parts, you're going to actually make the door a little bit skinnier. And then when you go to bring the glass down, that gasket's not going to be as tight. It's not going to wear. And over time, it's going to, work its way in there and the gasket will flatten out. But you never want to get to the point where the customer is having issues closing it. They shouldn't have to have so much force that they can't close it. And they shouldn't have so much resistance that the gasket is fraying. So this is probably the second most common issue that we see is fraying gasket there. And like I say, these 3 nuts will be able to adjust that. And obviously they exist on the other side as well. 1, 2, 3. Okay. The last issue that we tend to run into on the Uptown is related to the screen. If I'm actually going to go back an image here. If you look at the whole system, it's very, very tight. And we are trying to make it as clean as possible aesthetically. One of the ways we did that is by completely eliminating a whole set of counterweights. As you know, on the Rumfords, Rumford 1000s, Rumford 1500s, we have counterweights for the fire screen and we have counterweights for the door. Well, the counterweight system for the screen on the Uptown is not actually a counterweight. It's a counter spring. So this spring right there, it's kind of coiled up in my drawing here, but this is attached to the screen, okay? And that's what gives you your resistance. It's basically a coil, kind of like you would see on some really high-end windows that are very heavy. They give you a counterbalance. So this coil is what gives you the counterbalance on a Uptown screen. And there's a little bit of variance from coil to coil. We have like a 10% variance in every single coil. So if you ever get a unit that along the top of the screen, you may see it sometime. This is the screen from the back here. And you may see a piece of metal along the top here screwed into these holes. That's a weight. We add weight to the screen when oh, there we go. We add weight to the screen when it won't stay down. So if the guys on the line are adjusting it and they've put 2 springs on and they bring the screen down and then it wants to pop back up a little bit, well, they add a weight, they add a plate to bring it down. So we want every unit that leaves the factory to seal completely at the bottom and stick completely at the top. So they can sometimes add 2 or 3 plates to some of these units to make sure they stay down. Some of them require none. It's all based on the combination of springs that we get in that unit. So if you do see metal shims here, it's purely to balance the weight of the screen. And if you want to do something with them, add more, change them, whatever, that's totally fine to get the fit the way you want. But the best thing to do is to add some more weight if you're having problems with it not staying down. Obviously, that only works to a point, because eventually, if you add so much weight that the magnets, so at the top, we have these magnets. There's one there and one there. I'll just make these green as well. So between these 2 magnets, when those go up, those magnets actually stick right to the top of the casing. So the screen goes up and it actually hits right inside the casing at the very, very top. Okay, just inside here, donk, right there, and they stick. So when the magnets stick up there, the screen is supposed to stay up, but sometimes because of the variance in the springs and whatnot, if you get one that wants to drop, okay, we have seen a couple of times, and it's no fun. If a customer is using their fireplace and the screen and the door are up, and they go and they load wood in it, and the rattle of, the shake of the wood hitting the fireplace rattles a unit of hair, and then the screen shoots down and hits them in the arms, they don't like that. I can tell you they don't like that. So the best solution is to add a magnet. And we at the factory now are adding more magnets to make sure that it's really nice and stiff. But at the beginning, we were only providing 2. I think there's 3 now. But if you ever do have a unit that the screen wants to drop, just let us know and we can send you a little guy like this, just a magnet, and you can add it in one of those holes. They're really strong. They're, rare earth neodymium magnets that they don't demagnetize from heat. And they're the magnets we use everywhere, but they work really well. So this is the screen setup. You have 2 extra holes here. You can either put a hole in the middle or add a magnet in either one of those holes. Either will work, and then it should stay up. That is what I wanted to cover on the Uptown. Now, Laura, did we get any questions? I didn't see any chats come in during that section.
We do have one question. There is a question from Peter Parsons. Can the magnets be added after the install is complete?
You know it, buddy. Yes, absolutely. So the screen, the top of the screen here is relatively accessible. Obviously, when you've got the unit, you can open it in maintenance mode, right? So here, let me just hide the exterior portions here. So we've got our, oh, I hid too much. So we've got our brackets. So these little brackets here are what locks the unit down. You lift those brackets up and then the door can fold flat. By doing that, you'll have access directly to the top. See, if you look from above here, there's our screen. There's the other magnet, bing, bing. So super simple if you want to add it after the fact, even after the unit's installed. And you know, in general, anytime you're going to be working on one of these units that's installed and finished, everything can be changed after the fact. The pulleys, the counterweights, the screen, the entire door mechanism. If for some reason you got one that was bad, you can look kind of in between here. There's a bunch of bolts that hold it to the face. You could literally unbolt the whole thing and just yank the whole system off and replace it. You'd have to have a really good reason to do that, but if you had to, you could. Don't send me claims for that. So if there's nothing else on the Uptown, I'll move on to the Rumfords. This file that I'm using is a Rumford 1000. This is a current Rumford 1000. So for those of you who've been selling Renaissance since the beginning, you know that we had a previous design. We had our Rumford 1000, then the 1000B. We've changed iterations over the years. The 1500 had an original version, and now we have the 1500B, which is basically the same as this. So pretty much anything that I'm going to talk about here for this Rumford 1000 applies to a current unit and also applies to a current Rumford 1500. If you have gotten in the habit of working on these units, or if you haven't, the single best tool that I can recommend for you to have in your toolbox is a set of ratchets with Allen heads. Okay, some of these bolts, some of these nuts, we use Allen heads to get in there, and especially on the doors, on the screen rails, they're Allen heads and they're small, and you just can't get the torque you need to undo them with a little Allen key. So I would highly recommend buying a set of ratchets that includes a Allen heads, because they give you the torque that you need to pop things open. They set better, they just work better, and they'll save your fingers and they'll save the heads of the bolts at the same time. So I would highly recommend that. And always, 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 if you're ever servicing a Rumford 1000 or a Rumford 1500, especially if the problem is related to the door is scratching, or the door is hard to move, or the door is hitting something, or the screen won't come down, or whatever it is, the problem with having everything inside the unit is that you can't see anything. Like, it's all just full of stuff. So the first step that I always do is remove the screen. Okay, if you remove the screen, you'll have a much more clear line of sight to what's going on above. If there's screws up there that someone has put through the face, if there's something rubbing on the door, you'll be able to see the pulleys, make sure they're operating properly. But the number one step when you're looking and servicing a unit is start by removing the screen. You'll have so much more visibility inside the unit. It's not even funny. And most of the time, you don't have to take the door out. You can sometimes, move something aside or jam something in there to fix it. And, a hammer with a long piece of metal will fix a lot of things. So,
can I just pose a question for you?
Sure.
From one of our guests? They would like to know what size Allen key you would use. 5/32.
Yeah, so the vast majority of the Allen keys on the unit, in the rails, are 5/32. There is one at the bottom of the rails that holds them all in place. It's a little bit bigger. Honestly, off the top of my head, I'm not sure, but I think it's just one size larger. So, so for the screen though, you don't need any of that. To remove the reason I love removing the screen is it gives you visibility and it's simple. You don't even have to disconnect it. So a lot of people, this is the whole screen system here. On the right side, we have our rail. This is actually what the screen slides on. This is the support piece that mounts it to the unit, because the screen itself is not mounted to the unit. It's not mounted to the back. It's actually mounted to, well, it is mounted to the unit, but through brackets. So the rail for the screen is actually on the front of the screen. You can see the back of the screen here. We just have the screen part. The rail is on the front of the screen, and this is the bracket that supports it. So if you want to remove the screen in a Rumford 1000, you do not have to disconnect the cable. So here's this little loop, and here's the cable. You don't have to take that off. Don't even touch it. Okay, leave that exactly where it is. But do put your hand around to the back and undo this bolt. One nut. That's it. That's a 7/30 seconds. Now, at ICC, we try and do 7/30 seconds everywhere as much as possible. So 90% of the time, if you have to remove a nut on anything that's ICC-RSF Renaissance, it's going to be 7/30 seconds. So keep a few of them. But remove this, once this nut here is off, the entire screen system can come off. So at the bottom, you've got one nut. And then at the top, you have kind of it's another nut. It's another 7/30 seconds nut, but this one you don't have to undo. You can see just below it on the screen, there's this kind of ovalized hole. I don't know what they call that. But all you have to do is slide the screen up. So once that bottom nut is off, you can separate the screen from the rail and then lift it up. Now you might have to hold the rail down while you lift it, because if you just push on the bottom of the screen, you're going to push up the rail with it, right? But if you can separate, what I like to do is, so if we grab the screen, if we just grab the screen here, and we just move it back. So we'll just move that back, okay? So the screen is out of the way. You can see, oh, you can't see. I grabbed all the hardware together. Oh, I grabbed all the hardware together. So the bolt at the bottom here, this piece of the rail was supposed to stay behind. But this piece has the bolt running through it, and that bolt will actually stick to the front of the rail when you separate them. So the screen becomes loose, and all you have to do is lift it up. You can actually hook your finger over that bolt and just give the screen a whack. It'll jump off at the top, and then it'll be loose. So once you've done that and you've got the screen out, you can actually pull it down and pull it right out through the opening. Keep it connected to the counterweight, keep it connected to the cable. Just leave it there on the side. And on the opposite side, there's nothing holding it in place. On the opposite side, this is just a U channel to guide it. It's like just U-shaped. So there's nothing that actually locks it in there. It's just a guide. So once it's out, you'll have a lot more visibility in the unit, and you can actually, take a look around and see what's going on. So that is always going to be your first step. If you're trying to inspect a screen problem, a door problem, doesn't matter what it is, remove the screen. You'll have more room to work, better visibility, and it'll be a lot easier. This view is a kind of an exploded view of the entire screen system, because we do sometimes get screens that are difficult to move. So especially on the early Rumford 1500s, we had some screens that had a lot of resistance. What the customer would see is that with two hands, they could do it okay. But the second they tried to do anything with one hand, it would just jam. It was stuck. There was nothing that they could do. And this is something that actually took us at the factory a while to figure out. One thing to understand how these rails work, because we have customers order rails all the time. Send me a rail, they say. The problem is that the rail is not one piece. The rail is three pieces. So if we just look at the rail parts, it's three pieces. There's what we call two C channels and an H channel. This is a C, this is a C, and this is an H. And I'll show you why. This is what they look like. When they come together, or if we look at them straight from above, this is a view of these rails directly from the top. Okay, that's a C, and that's an H, right? So they fit together when they're in the unit and they're assembled. Well, they look like that. Sorry, someone was swearing outside. So there is the system, and you can see these are the, I'm just showing you this is the entire rail, right? But the top view, that's what it looks like. Okay. So if you ever have a lot of friction, chances are it's because of this H-rail piece. Okay. You probably don't need any new parts. Okay. If you've got a rail on a screen in particular that's giving you resistance or difficult to move, where the customer needs both hands and they have to keep it steady, chances are it's this piece right here. And you don't even need to change it. All you have to do is flip it around. There is a front and a back on this H-rail piece. It doesn't look like it in the drawing because the drawing is wrong. See this drawing here, it looks like the way that it's made, it looks like the H-rail piece is uniform on both sides, but it's not. In real life, this is what it looks like. So in real life, we have one side that's got kind of like double material. If you look really closely at the way it's made from one piece of steel that's bent. So it kind of comes up here, and then it's got double material here, and then double material here, and then single material there. So there's a side of the H-rail that's doubled and a side that's single. The double side goes on the door screen, whichever one it is. So if you've got a door, well, the doubled side should be facing the door. And because the rail is on the front of the screen, well, on the screen, it's supposed to be facing the screen. So always make sure that the single side is what's mounted to the C channel on the unit. I hope that's clear. It's difficult to explain, but there is a front and a back on these things. And if you put this doubled side the other way, it's gonna create additional resistance. Okay. So if you have a problem customer who's been complaining about the screen that doesn't work well, doesn't slide well for a long time, get in there, pull this rail out, flip it around, put it back in, and you should be good to go. And if you want a new one, don't worry about it. Just ask for a new one. But don't call me and ask for a new screen, because that's what people do. I need a new screen. No, you don't. You need a new H-rail. Okay. But as you can see, the real life picture is different than this drawing. Okay. Doubled on the top, single on the bottom. I would recommend that you guys take a picture of this with your phones. I can see a couple of you. Get your phones out and take pictures. I'm going to give you 30 seconds before I move on. Lynn, I'm looking at you. You don't have your phone out. But this is important, and this is obviously recorded. We're going to make it available, and if you take a screenshot, it'll be helpful. So I would highly recommend grabbing a screenshot of this before I move on. So next, sometimes you'll see that the screen, when it comes down, is not perfectly flat. So you may get a screen that when it's raised, it's sagging on one side, or when it's down, it's lifting on one side. Okay. The fire screen only has one counterweight on it. So if you look at the system, let's go back to our screenshot here of what the system looks like. There's weight on one side, right? Oh, Laura, you got a question?
Yes, it's a question from Kim Davis, actually. Could that piece be mounted the wrong way from the factory in a new unit? I'm assuming she means the H piece.
That is 100% impossible, Kim. That's impossible. Yes, yeah, it's very possible. What we do at the factory now is we identify the doubled side, and we make sure that they're putting it the right way. But obviously, anytime you get changeover, turnover, people get trained and they have to put in 1,000 parts. Of course, it's possible that it gets in. Just hopefully you identify it on the site before leaving, because it's easier to change it out with the unit not finished. But yes, it does happen sometimes. It shouldn't happen anymore because it's become such a known issue. But for a long time, we didn't know. For a long time, we didn't know there was a front and a back, and we had no idea why there were some screens that had issues and some screens that didn't. And then we figured it out. The guys on the line figured it out because they were the ones putting them in. So when you look at the design here, you've got weight on one side. So the weight is pulling from this point, this corner is literally the only spot that weight is being pulled off of. So because of that, when the screen goes up, and it goes up out of the top of the rail, because when this, here, let me just show you what happens. When this screen raises, woohoo, everything's hidden. Let's try this again. When the screen goes up, it kind of, but by the time it gets to the top, it's somewhat out of the rail. So the C, you know, the top of the rail kind of ends here, that's supporting it. The H stops there. So the screen actually sticks somewhat above it, and you've got weight from this corner only. So it may want to, this is going to be exaggeration, sag a little bit, right? It may want to do that. So if it does that, let's say it goes that bad, that's impossible, but when the screen is up, what you're going to get when you're looking at it from the front is you're going to get a left side that's lower than a right side. All right, this is obviously an extreme exaggeration, but that's what's happening. The counterweight is lifting on the right side, and there's not enough support on the left side, and it's wanting to drop down. So there's two solutions for that. The first one is to, let me just get things straight again here. The first one is to shim this rail out. Okay, this U channel on the left side is what's supporting the fire screen. And if you, I'm actually going to just take a look at the whole unit here. So you can see the entire left side here. This green piece here is going to be our U channel. And it is connected to this bracket and this bracket, right? These are the parts that are holding it in place, okay? So there's like 5 bends in here, 1, 2, 3, 4. So because of the number of bends, and we've got some adjustment, this is, you can see this is an oblong hole, right? So if you can get in there and loosen this, you have some play, okay? So this is held in place just behind the rail. This is the front. There's a screw hole here, and that's a 7/16 nut. If you can loosen that, you should be able to pull that screen tighter to the right, or even add a shim. You can add a shim behind it in between these two, whether it's a washer or something like that, and then tighten it back up. But it's possible that you're just getting a little bit too much movement on this left side support U channel, and it's letting the screen fall over too far when it's up. You probably only have to adjust it at the top. I doubt you'll have to adjust it at the bottom, but if you do bring it over at the top, it'll give it better support when the screen is up. Okay, that's potential solution number 1. The other solution is to, where was I? On the support piece, nope, that's not where I want to be. Sorry. The piece that mounts the actual rail, we were talking about the C rails and the H rail. It's mounted to this support bracket. And this piece also has oblong holes in it. And it's screwed to brackets similar to the one we just looked at in 2 locations. One there, this one here. This is on the back side. So there's a nut on the back side at the top, and then a nut on the back side at the bottom. And if you loosen those, you'll see, I'm just going to hide this bracket here. I'm going to hide all this. If we hide this bracket, and then hide the hardware, you can see this is, again, an oblong hole. So this support piece has oblong holes at the top and bottom. That lets it, just like we were doing before, that lets it rotate. Okay, so you can adjust this piece as you need to get it straight. Laura, yes?
Okay, we had a question. Is there any way to make it fixed so it doesn't move or need adjustments?
The problem, well, yes, of course, we can always use round holes instead of oblong ones. The problem is that, let me show you. kind of like we're looking at on this side. So each bend, if you look at the equipment, each bend has a hair amount of tolerance. And the more bends you add, if you have like half a degree of tolerance on each bend, then this one could be 88.5 or 89.5. This one could be 90.5. This one could be 89.5. And by the time that you get to the point where this is mounted to the unit and this is bolted in place, then you're in a situation where without any adjustment at all, things are guaranteed to be misaligned. So we always, in places that we do need a bit of adjustment, we put small amounts of oblong holes to allow for some adjustment. The guys in the factory are supposed to obviously adjust this so that they're perfect when they leave the factory, and they do a very good job in general. But the reason we can't eliminate the adjustment is purely because there's always play in the bends, and by the time you add 3-4 bends to something, you may want it to be here, but it's there, and so you need that much tolerance to be able to get there. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. And so we do eliminate them. We always use round holes wherever we can. And then lastly, on this rail, the only other spot that may cause you issues is this is the top rail support. So if we look at this from the front, okay, here's your bottom part of the rail support. And then here's the part that's actually connected to the top of the pulley. So looking at this from the side, if you look at it from the back, actually, there is another C channel on it. So this is part of it. So this C channel at the top grabs the H rail here and gives it support. And so this piece here is also adjustable. I'm just going to hide these bolts and hide the bracket. And on the bottom side, this has got 2 nuts. See these nuts? If those were loosened, okay, once those are loose, you have some adjustment there as well. So I do apologize for the amount of oblong holes in places with adjustment. It can be difficult. The best thing to do is to remove the screen, try and get in there and loosen some of them and get it straight. It can be a bit challenging to get into some of these locations, I know, but without the oblong holes, nothing would be straight. It's kind of a necessity. Okay, and this is the image, of course, with the U channel where the shims can go and how to bring that a little bit further in. The other thing that you might see if you're ever working on one and you see that the screen rail, see that this is the H rail I've just selected here, okay? I'm gonna move it up and down. If you ever get to a job site and you see that the H rail is down there, if you look at the bottom of the door where it's protruding downwards, if you can see the H rail at the bottom, that means it's fallen. The only reason it would have fallen is if, see that nut in my little drawing here, this nut right here was not there for some reason. And the reason would be that we built a few batches without it. So we did build a couple production runs that missed this one nut, and or it could have been removed during a service at some point. But if that nut is not there, it's what's holding the H rail upright. And when the H rail is upright, I'll show you again. When it's down, nope, not rotate. When it's down, when it's at the bottom, it's no longer inside the top support. Look, it just misses it. So you don't get the support at the top that you need. So when you lift that screen up, instead of it being stable at the top, it's going to be super floppy. And then they're going to try and bring it back down and it's going to rattle. It's going to cause problems. So this, if you get to a site and you take a peek in here and you see this rail, it's very clearly visible. If you can see it, it shouldn't be there. Okay, it means you're missing a bolt. You want to, sorry, I just got to grab it here. You want to lift that back up. Okay, you want to line it up with this hole right here, or with this green one here. Put that bolt back in. And if you can, simultaneously align it with the C rail up here, which is easier said than done. But this is a very common issue that some guys, when they do a service, they forget to put that bolt back in, and it will stay here for a little while. The friction of the door and the screen and whatnot will hold it in place for a little while. But once you've lifted it and brought it down a few times, it's going to bottom out. And then when you go to lift the door, it's going to lift up and down with the screen. It's going to lift up and down with the screen when you go up and down. So that's going to cause you problems. Any last questions on the screen before I move on to the door? Sorry, an hour training is not very long. Should have made this 3 hours next time. Okay, on the door, the far and away, the main issue that we see on the door is scraping resistance in the bottom 4 or 5 inches. Okay, you all know what I'm talking about. Why does that happen? It happens because, okay, this is the door system, right? So these are the counterweight channels, the pulleys, the counterweights are in here, the door goes up and down. This system is mounted to the unit, and this is the facing of the fireplace. Okay, so the way that we seal the Rumford 1500 and the 1000 at the top of the door is there's a ledge. This ledge here, if I look at it from the side, you can see it sticks out, right? That ledge is where the door, I'm going to go right from the side so you can see. That ledge is right where the door gasket, which we have a stainless steel gasket at the top, it hits this ledge and seals against the face. And it just so happens that the distance, those bottom 5 inches, is that height right there. So the friction that you're seeing is the door against the front face of the unit. When it hits this ledge, that screeching sound, that rubbing sound, whatever it is, it's happening right there. And so you can, one of the best things to do is clean it. I mean, this area is accessible by hand. You can reach in there. I've applied grease before to this ledge here too, and that works very well. We provide high temperature grease with the unit. You just kind of give it a gentle coat, give it a really good clean, put a bit of grease there. The other thing is that I feel like I'm talking about things that we've done wrong a lot, but we produced some of the gaskets. So the gasket that seals against it is a stainless steel gasket. I'm going to give you a side view here. So this is the entire door mechanism, all of this. And as you can see, there's literally just one little thing that sticks out. This is the gasket. Okay, that is the door gasket. And when it hits the face, it seals right there. Okay, here's what it looks like on its own. And this piece is changeable. Okay, so if you ever need to change this part, it's just bolted to the top of the door. You do want it to be snug, but you want it to be a little bit more than hand tight, but no more than that. If it's too tight, it can suck the door in and actually gives you more resistance. And if it's too loose, if these bolts are too loose, right, there's like a bunch of them across the top of the door. If these are too loose, then the gasket gets floppy, and this stainless steel component on the back here actually flips over, and then your door is basically jammed and you have to take it apart. So that is the culprit right there. And again, like I say, we built some units with this piece here. They painted it. They painted the back piece where the actual gasket is supposed to be sealing against the front of the unit. They painted that part, and the paint obviously just adds a certain amount of friction. So we send you a new one of these. Obviously, that's full warranty for any of the service that you have to do to change that part. But that is your main culprit. 99% of the time when you get in there, you can get this piece in, replace the back of the door gasket with it, and then the sound goes away. And always make sure that you're testing it up and down to make sure that it's not creating too much of a resistance while you're working on it. So if you do have a system that's really, really tough to move, especially in those bottom 5 inches, obviously the door could be over tight. Loosening the bolts at the top of the door and around the door can help, but don't over loosen them. This guy's usually the culprit though. And by the time you get in there, take it out, it's often damaged, it's warped, it's all kinds of stuff, and it's just not working well anymore. The last thing I wanted to cover is the door getting stuck at the top. Okay. The door, before you leave, like this is like Renaissance 101. Try and move the door on the screen. I mean, you know, sometimes the installation happens and you've got a million things that are going on and you finally got it in and you're done and you're ready to go. But if you don't fully lift the door and fully lift the screen several times and pull them back down, you're potentially putting yourself in a bad situation, because the mason's going to come by and he's going to finish things off. And you had access earlier. You had, the casing was open. You could have got in there. It's in your best interest just to fully move the door. And when I say fully, I mean all the way to the top, all the way to the bottom, several times, screen and door. Because what will happen sometimes is guys finish it off and then they go and they lift the door and it moves a foot. And then they're like, ah, door moves, bring it back down, and then they're gone. What can happen is these pulleys, okay, with the cables on them, like I guess our guys couldn't draw a rounded cable. That's what they give me. But these cables easily will be off. And if that cable is off, it's going to be sitting on the bolt. See this bolt right here, this little like spacer? It's going to be jumping off that pulley and it's going to be sitting on that bolt. And the door will be smooth. I promise you, the door will be smooth like it's on the pulley. I promise. You will not know that it's not on, okay? But it's not. And the way you'll know that it's not is that when the pulley is not, when the cable, excuse me, is not on the pulley, the cable is longer. It droops lower, right? So the pulley sitting at the top of these are 4-inch diameter pulleys. That's 2 inches up and 2 inches down, plus the radius that you went around. So when the cable is not on the pulley, it's down there sitting on this metal bar here, the counterweights drop lower. And if they drop low enough, they'll bottom out in the bottom of the unit. And when that happens, on their way back up, there's a lot of stuff in here. There's a lot of stuff inside the unit, right? If we look this from the very bottom side, you run the risk of this coming out and jamming on this ledge. So here's our counterweight. Sorry guys, I'm sure I'm making you all sick here. But this back piece here of the counterweight is designed to keep it inside the channel. Okay. When the counterweight cable is properly installed, this piece should never dip low enough to get outside of this opening. So you see that from the front, how this is like a ledge there. If you bring the door up all the way and then go to bring it back down and it just stops dead, like completely dead, about 1.5 inches in, okay, maybe a bit more, maybe 2 inches. It is because the counterweight is hitting, it's bottoming out on this ledge. And when that happens, usually you can jiggle the door around or reach in there and push the counterweight over. But it is not because you got the wrong cables, okay? Don't call me and say I got 1,500 cables for my 1,000. You didn't. The counterweight cable is not on, okay, maybe you did, but you probably didn't. The counterweight cable is actually on the axle of the pulley, okay? And you can, if you get in there, pull out your screen, you'll see it. I promise you, you will see it. And then you can try and figure out how to stick a hockey stick in there and get it back over. I'm not sure what you want to use to do that, but there's most of the guys that I know have figured out how to get the counterweight, the cable back on the pulley without taking out the screen and the door and doing all that. You can usually jam something in there and get it in place. So that's the end of the topics that I had like prepared. Laura, was there anything else that kind of came in?
No, I don't see anything right now, but maybe we'll give people a couple of minutes.
I'm here for 3 minutes and 50 seconds. So if you do have a question, something that I didn't cover and you want to see it more close up, toss something in the chat and we'll take care of it. I'm going to throw this back up, so if anybody didn't grab a screenshot, they can do that now.
So Dan, we do have a comment from Kim Davis. It was extremely useful information, and where can it be referenced in the days ahead? Kim, are you asking where you can view this presentation again?
Kim, you were here. It's in your brain now.
So we will have it on available on our website in our members only section, and also I think ICC will have it available as well.
Yeah, we're going to make this available for any of our dealers who want to use it. Obviously, I think it's a great tool for anyone who's either starting with Renaissance or experienced with Renaissance. All the little bits and pieces. For sure, we'll send you copies of the video file for anyone to use. One question that we have 2 minutes here, and I would prefer to do it all by chat instead of people unmuting. But if people want to unmute now, I'm gonna jump out of this and stop sharing my screen, and we can discuss. One thing that came up a few times in preparing for this was there's got to be someone on this call who's become an expert in moving these things around, and a 1500 is like 980 pounds, and a linear is like 1100 pounds. I just wanted to throw it out there if we got anybody on here who wants to share the way that they get around moving the units so that they don't kill their employees or break their backs or just make it easy.
We always use the old Egyptian highway method through the house using excess bars the lifting bars. But really that 1500 has got to be put in place with a mechanical device.
I usually recommend, most of the time these are new construction and there's usually equipment on site somewhere. A lot of the time you can get someone to carry the unit up there with a big piece of equipment and set it down so that you can get the lifting bars on it. We do provide, the handles on the lifting bars are on the sides and they're adjustable for height. So with 4 guys, it's not bad, or some of you guys have big burly guys that maybe 2 is enough, but maybe not for 1500.
So Dan, there is a question from Peter Parsons on how do these get broken, and he sent a photo, and I'm going to see if I can open it and then share my screen.
Make sure if it's from Peter, make sure you look at it first. I don't want to share anything that's.
Oh, it won't let me save. Hang on. And while I'm doing that, I just want to say thank you to ICC for supporting our education programs. We ran some sessions a few weeks ago, which were on different HR issues. We had one on selling to today's customer. And so we have 3 new sessions that are available in our webinar library. If anybody is interested in viewing those, please get in touch with us. Okay.
Are you trying to share the image?
I am trying. I'm just.
Okay. You can just text it to me and then I'll show it on my phone or something.
It's in the chat. You may be able to access it.
Ah, okay. Let me take a look.
I'll race you. Okay, I have it open.
Okay. If you want to just share your screen and show us, then we'll take a look.
I think she was cheating, Dan.
I had a bit of a head start. Now I can't. Oh, there it is. Okay. Zoom. Okay, can you see that?
Yes. Oh.
How
okay.
do these get broken?
So that is the bracket that basically holds the surround to the face of the fireplace. It gets screwed into the front of the unit. And if you look at the design of that, it's a laser cut tab. And then we laser cut the bend joints in it. So that we just bend them by hand so that we don't have to use hardware and we don't have to use any bending equipment. The guys literally just go in there and they bend it with their hand. The only way that would break is if it got bent in, bent out, bent in again, and metal fatigue would cause it to break. If it arrived like that, it's possible it happened on our line. And I'm just looking at this now and where it broke. To be honest, Peter, I haven't seen one like this before. I know all the tech guys say that they've never seen things before, but I haven't seen this like that. I don't see a lot of material in the part that's not bent. There should be probably a bit more material, and it should probably be a little bit harder for our guys to bend, but this looks pretty easy to break. So I suspect that what happened is either on the line, they put it in place and then had to take it off and then bent it flat somehow and then bent it again. And maybe then with transport, the metal fatigue broke it. Because once it's bent once, it shouldn't move. So I suspect it happened here, unfortunately. And hopefully the guys didn't notice and then just ship it anyways.
Is there any concern with that though?
You know, it's that this is the left vertical support, right?
Yeah,
So this is going to be connected to your front support. It's going to be connected to your top support. I don't see any significant issue with it. You know, it's there to give you some additional rigidity, but you're going to be basically stuck to another two parts of the frame, right? So I don't think it's a significant issue to leave it as it is.
Sorry, I was talking away. I think that's all the questions that we have so far, unless anyone else has anything, and you can just unmute yourself.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody wants to toss anything out there, just feel free to unmute yourself. We'll give her another minute or two and call it. So it's really rare that I get to talk to so many customers all at once. And since COVID, I don't think I've talked to many customers at all. So so it's just, I want to say, like, thank you for your business so much. I know things are crazy right now. It's like every single day is the middle of October. So we are, I promise you that we are doing everything we can to get your orders out, build your chimney, build your fireplaces, ship everything on time. And I know you've been experiencing some delays, but we are doing everything we can to be a good supplier. And it's all for you. So, you know, we live day to day, week to week, not knowing what material we're going to have in stock, but it always seems to arrive, and the equipment, sometimes it breaks, but then it gets fixed. And it's been a tough season. I honestly feel like we're still in the season since last, you know, whatever it was, August, when things went just absolutely nuts. It never ended. So so I'm sure it's been similar for you guys. And really, the past, to give you an idea, the past, what is it, 6 months in a row have been record months at ICC. Every single month has been the biggest month we've ever had. And it's all thanks to you. The market is obviously exploding right now, but I really want to thank you for your business and thank you for attending today. And I think we'll call it. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, Dan.
thanks, Dan.